G'day expats and welcome to another episode of Expat Chat, episode 152 today. And no, you're not seeing James Ridley or Adam Prentice or Martin Jack on the other side of the screen here or other side of the earbuds, if whatever you listen to. It's a good mate of mine, Carl Dowling, who is another Aussie here based in the UAE. And Carl is the founder or joint founder. Carl, was that correct? Joint founder with yourself?
Yeah.
Yes.
And
with CSP Group. So they've just gone through a rebrand recently. They used to be called CBD. Now they're called CSP. And Carl's got to talk today about setting up a business in, I wouldn't say just the UAE, because you guys cover a lot of areas, don't you, mate?
yeah, all across the UAE. We recently found out 53 jurisdictions in total.
Damn. So, and that's sub-jurisdictions inside of each country?
Yeah, so you got 7 Emirates and then all the free zones within.
Fantastic.
So yeah, quite a large array, more than you would have ever thought.
No, you wouldn't think that. Well, mate, thank you very much for joining us this morning. And just for the folks out there, to keep the compliance officers happy, all the information that Carl and I are going to talk about today should be general information only, educational, informational. Do not take it as personal advice. If you do want to get personal advice, reach out to us. We've done this a few times and we know what we're talking about.
And it's only valid almost for today, the region.
That's right.
From tomorrow, it can actually happen just like that. We can always give a lot of background on what has been done before and what worked before. But if you've got a project that's literally about to move forward, we'll typically say, we'll do a final check.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. Give us 5 minutes and we'll see, check the government websites and see when things change. So, and it's a good, nice little segue into the first point I want to have a chat about. I mean, to me, it was a bit of a, we're talking this off air before, Dubai was always that, or UAE was that dark place that, it's murky, it's risky and everything. Wow, what a difference 5 years makes. And, I think one of the reasons why I wanted to get you on the podcast is we're seeing so many Aussies coming out of Australia, obviously because they're Australian, coming out of Oz and wanting to either rebuild themselves in a new jurisdiction, obviously expand into a new jurisdiction. Now we've got the CEPA agreement between the UAE and Australia, which is awesome. Well done, Ridwan and the crew down in Abu Dhabi. It is quite different than just jumping on an ASIC portal and applying for your PTY LTD and off you go. And I think that's where, I try and explain it. I can't do it as good a job as you do. So it's also jumping on the call here because to me, there's a process, there's probably a strategy, isn't it? I mean, it starts at a very high level. What are you trying to do? Okay, that'll give you these options and, just obviously 56 jurisdictions. I mean, you can't summarize 56 in 5 minutes, but if someone's looking to set up in the region for the first time, what are some of the key, I guess, top 5 points that they need to be aware of when coming into the region?
3 points. First and most important, which I think you would agree with, cash flow. Payments can be late here. You can't just sign a contract and then just rely on that contract to serve you through. You've got to have value add and defense mechanisms in all your contracts just to make sure that you're not over leveraged and then put in a sticky spot. So we say even if we've got direct experience in a client's area that's looking to set up here, get legal advice, local legal advice, someone who is in the UAE and has spent some time here, just to make sure you don't misstep. But then the common pitfall is that 53 jurisdictions.
Yeah.
Where do you set up?
Yeah.
That's where the nightmare begins for most, and this is where I probably would say that we have had a bad run of marketing because we have just as many Australians come on board as clients after they've set something up that's not fit for purpose. We've got about the same amount that set up from scratch with us, and that's just because it's very hard to sift your way through that many options. The key to figuring out what license to set up, where license is a company registration, is what are you doing? So what is your company activity and where are you doing it? Because all company licenses in the UAE have predetermined activities listed on them. And if your activity is regulated, such as a hospital, you need to gear up in terms of get your premises ready to go, qualified staff in-house before they will give you the sign-off to get your license to trade. So what are you doing is key component, and that is easily boiled down to what is going to be on your invoice, the most simplistic way. The other one is where you're doing it. So who's your client? If you're looking to set up a shop in Dubai Mall, it's pretty open, shut, easy case. But if you're a management consultant looking to work maybe just lightly in the UAE, but largely with contracts overseas, you can sometimes avail free zones with great advantages. Free trade zones in very limited circumstances can be tax-free. But the issue you're going to face is that not many, sound self-serving, not many companies are independent. There's corporate service providers like us. So you'll be kind of wedged in to a particular solution because there's generally a lot of commissions that go with it. And that's not generally forthcoming as part of the process.
And
when the money's gone, it's gone.
It's the same experience we have here in the financial services game. Everyone is conflicted. I think there's probably 3 firms in the whole of the UAE, and we're the only Australian firm for that matter, that is fiduciary, fee for service. You pay us to do a job, we deliver that to you. And you guys are the same. And I think that's why, Atlas and CSP work so well together, because you know what you're getting. You pay peanuts, you get monkeys, as they say. And I think that's the big thing when people reach out to us saying, hey, I'm moving to the UAE, I'm doing this. We talk about the personal tax, financial planning side of it. But when we dig a bit deeper, it's like, okay, so how, you talk to them? Who's, and I think it's, Australians have a pretty good bullshit radar, but also too, when there's 50 firms presenting themselves with absolute polish, saying that they are the best corporate service provider in the UAE, it becomes very hard to sort of sort the wheat from the chaff. And there's a lot of people who are Johnny-come-latelys. That's what I'm finding is, they're being set up for 5 minutes and they're charging, either stupid money or not enough to do not much. And we're seeing a lot of folks who are sort of getting caught up in that. So I've always cautioned, and correct me if I'm wrong, and said to people, unless the company's got 10 years in the industry or in the region, don't touch them, because they haven't seen it all. They can't talk about, we did this in the past and we fix this in the future, and having that skill to navigate. As you say, the rules keep changing so quickly. And if you don't have the resources in place to be able to, monitor those rules. One guy I spoke to about 3 weeks ago, he was told X, and those rules haven't been the case for the last 6 months. And I was actually the one that said, you might want to go back to that. And then I said, wait a minute, don't do it. Go talk to Carl's crew at CSP, because I know they will know it. And this is the thing, people are putting out, they're charging for incorrect information. And people are getting burnt out. I mean, this couch over here, I joke about it. It's the psychology couch. People come in, they're fresh off the boat. They're like, and their eyes are like dinner plates. They're like, what have I done? And, I say to them, look, the good news is you're in the right place. Action's here. It's going well. It's getting better. Where you fell over was working with the incorrect parties. And, we sort of work our way through that and say, you need to talk to this person, this person, this person. I think that's the hardest thing is, and that's why we wanted to do this episode, because you and I talk about this, and I talk privately to clients all the time about this, but let's get it out there and say, okay, what is that ultimate hit list that folks coming out of Oz or any other jurisdictions, we are seeing, Australians who own businesses in other areas coming in as well too. What do they need to really look for when selecting a corporate service provider?
Someone that will say to you that you shouldn't trust me.
Yeah, I like that. That's good. Yeah.
So I'm sure anyone watching this episode will look at me and just be like, how could I trust you? You look like a slick, cheesy salesman as well. So if you're a very small business, you've got, the budget's tight, anyone can walk through the door here, and we're going to give them some quick, easy answers and just say, look, do it yourself. Here's a few tips, and you potentially get away doing it yourself, without too much hassle. There are some very simple solutions, but if you have a business that needs a bit more investment, so you're going to be creating a lot of substance behind that license, and you have clients that are very compliant, could be government, then it's better that you do get advice. And it doesn't matter even if Carl says, I'm independent, I'll lead you down the right track. Get a lawyer to double check it. So that's your litmus test. Whoever you are looking to work with, and there are some good CSPs out there, I'm not saying we're the only ones, but the litmus test is, will you be able to pass the sense check with a lawyer with what you're looking to do? And again, a lawyer that's in the UAE for some time is always just a must-have. And it's nothing against anyone else from around the world, but it's just knowing the latest changes. As you just said, that client, that had information that's 6 months old.
Yep.
So the litmus test is always, will an independent party be able to verify that this is the right way to go? And if the response to that is, well, you need to sign today, then be worried. I mean, we recently had a referral, and it was very difficult not to say something, but the client has paid $20,000 to set up a free zone that will cost about $3,000 and take maybe 1 or 2 days work for someone that's had a week's worth of training. It's the simplest, gnarliest license that you can get. And we're not sure it's really the right one for it. It could work, but yeah, $20,000, and that was just going through a friend of a friend of a friend. So not everyone's going to want to, get a big lawyer's bill along the way. So for anyone that is putting that investment in, if you don't know someone, a friend of a friend that isn't a lawyer here that can just verify, sense check, then we always introduce lawyers that don't come with, the big bills. I mean, if you can, you want to use the best, go for it. But yeah, just that sense check is key because you want someone that has a professional qualification with skin in the game to effectively say, that sounds right.
It's that accountability, isn't it? It's someone being able to, if they tell you something wrong, you can actually hold them accountable to that information.
Yeah. And that's, so 13 years we've been running, 80% of our clients get referred by lawyers. So we will effectively go to firms just to say, look, we're UAE, Saudi, Oman, Qatar. We're here whenever you've got a transaction that you need help with. So that's where we have relationships where, if we can, we make introductions just so parties can check. And there are some big transactions where we could make very good fees from, but we feel better to introduce that client to a lawyer to take a large chunk of those fees because it's more appropriate given the level of investment. So that's where you've done well in your space as well, Brett. It's the longer burn of just getting the regulations, getting the right license, doing it the right way. It takes time, but it builds.
Look, it is. And I think, one thing that folks don't understand coming out of Oz or any other countries is the place is wired differently. So in Australia, you pay your $275 a year to renew your P2I Limited with ASIC. Let's talk about what a company license is here, because that's quite a different kettle of fish than back in Oz.
It's a whole marketing experience for going down here. So this is where I love it. The company's law of the UAE is quite simple. There's not 100 different variations and amendments to it. It's quite concise compared to Australia, that's for sure. But it's funny how the marketing departments go haywire with the various different options. So freelance, there is nothing in the company's law, the UAE, for freelance, but it's just a really nice way of packaging up a cheap and cheerful one-person operating license. So that's when you're looking at who's the client, what's the activity, when you are budgeting for the setup, you need to be aware that there is no fixed price. Every free zone competes against every other free zone. So you've got 46 free zones out there. They're all competing against each other. They've all got their own packages, USPs. Some may say that there's no office fee. Some may say there's no license fee this year. I'll always say that, generally speaking, websites are not kept up to date because it just moves so fast, and that's not a dig at them, any free zone at all. It's just that it does move so quickly. Every client we send a proposal to, we always do a fresh check.
That's right.
Sure nothing's changed again. But whatever incentive is there on year one, I always say remove it from year 2 onwards. So if there's a free license in year 1, if they say it's forever, I would never assume it's forever, just because there's got to be money made long term. So when you're looking at the various licenses, you are going to see a multitude of different terminology being deployed: office lease, shared desk, immigration establishment card, licensing fee, knowledge fee. And each jurisdiction will sometimes label the same fee slightly differently.
Yep.
What's key that we like to do is we provide an Excel sheet set up year 1, year 2, 3, 4. So all your ongoing costs laid out for the various options. So generally, a client comes to us, we'll like to give 3, 4, 5 options to them and let them know the positives, negatives of each one based on what they're looking to do. That get a very clear, concise cost laid out for what is year 1 and then year 2 renewable, and stress test it. Just make sure that you don't want to find out you sign up and then that sheet they sent you was out of date, whoopsie. So you've got to stress test what they're sharing with you and make sure that it is valid, up to date. The cheapest license, I think you mentioned one earlier, I think there's one out there that's in $2,000 to get. That is within a free zone in one of the northern Emirates. Nothing wrong with it. We have set some licenses up there for transactions that just is perfect for it. They didn't want to spend much money. It was more for like commissions and part of some contracts where they're not going to need to build substance of a bricks and mortar company there. So there's some very cheap ones out there, but then you go up to like where you are, DIFC, ADGM. The license on its own is $20,000. Around that, you can have additional costs such as mandatory office leasing, which is at the price
ridiculous.
Of whatever. Each free zone will have different rents, and then they'll have a different minimum space to get the license. And then you can get caught out with how much space you need per visa.
Yep.
So, and I've had very frustrated people walk through our door that as they're walking out, why can't you give me a fixed fee? There are too many variables, especially one meeting. I can get very accurate after a second catch up where you've had a thorough look at how many staff you're going to bring on board and you're knuckling down on at least 1 or 2 options for what license you want to get. But it can easily vary from, let's say, $3,000 total, I would say is a minimum budget, but can easily go up to $40,000, $50,000. So frustrating.
Look, I think it's that sort of that little thread you pull off a jumper, and as you keep pulling it, it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And that was our own personal experience. Coming here, I thought I knew 80% of it, and I did like over a year's worth of research, and I flew in and loud and met a lot of people. It wasn't until I was here that I realised, I need this. I mean, the whole the space you rent dictates how many people you can have on your books and put visas on. I'm almost jealous. It's brilliant because it means that the jurisdictions are actually property plays. They're asset managers as opposed to, compliance and organisational, managers. So, I'm very, frustrated by that myself. I want to hire more people, then I have to get a bigger office. So I'm forced in that sort of regard. And, to me, obviously work from home is a discussion point that dominates Australia. But over here, it's like, no, if you want that many people, you just need to, hire the office. You touched on a point before about the jurisdictions. And I think the concept of onshore and offshore is quite different here because back in Australia, we have one jurisdiction, Aussie soil. Whereas here, it's all very different in terms of the different zones allowing you different activities, but also to what you do between mainland and offshore. Do you want to sort of touch on sort of those key points?
Yeah, so mainland would be non-free zone, offshore typically seen as free trade zone. But then you've finally got some free zones that have offshore licenses within them. So this is where the terminology is known. That free trade zones were set up, JAFZA, Jebel Ali Free Zone was the first one. They were originally set up because it was a place where you could operate a business without needing a local owner. The majority of companies outside of free trade zones needed to either have a shareholder, a 51% Emirati shareholder or GCC shareholder, or a sponsor, which I won't delve into. So trade zones were an easier route for international companies to come here and test the market. But they did have, as per law, the limitation that they should only be B2B solution. What that means is a company in Jebel Ali Free Zone could import containers of stock into the UAE, specifically at Jebel Ali port, into the Free Zone. But they couldn't have a shop. They couldn't sell to direct customers. They needed to sell their goods to a company that was in the mainland that could then have shops such as Dubai Mall. So the majority of prime real estate is typically mainland in Dubai, say for DIFC, and there are a couple of zones listed in the centre of the city, but I'd say 80% of the land is mainland. Now that requirement for a local owner, sponsor, that dropped off 3 years ago. They announced it. 2 years ago they started implementing it, and only as about 6 months ago did the majority of activities really just get released from that requirement. So now mainland free zone, same playing field.
You don't need a sponsor, you don't need a partner, you can do it yourself.
Yeah, so there was always a stigma against going to the mainland because, all that extra hassle, even though legally more companies were required to go there. So I had 10 years of my life trying to educate clients that are looking to set up here that you're going to need to get a local partner and operate onshore with your business type. And then you would have a freezer and say, here's a workaround, here's a way that you can just kind of squeeze it to make it happen. But now that advantage has gone away, free trade zone, most companies in there still need to pay corporate tax. Very, very few limited conditions where they can not be required to pay corporate tax. Very, very few. And I think that will get squeezed over time. But also the one limited advantage now free trade zones have is localization. So just as every country in the world has a requirement to hire local nationals, the UAE has an Emiratization scheme. I think it is 6% at the moment, 5 or 6%. I think it's just gone to 6. It's going up to 10% by 2027. But that is for companies that have 20 staff or more. So if you've got less than 20, it's not going to touch you. So if you're less than 20 staff, you don't have to worry about localization requirements, free zone onshore. Very limited advantage to go. Still, there's no void. It's not that you don't need a free zone anymore. There still are some advantages such as like the port clearance with goods. But yeah, for the majority of clients, we will still recommend to avoid being hamstrung by that less police requirement to only do B2B transactions within a free zone. Onshore mainland setup seems to be the easier way forward for a business to operate and grow. One stickler that I will maybe just segue into is that you can't move your license.
And that was going to be a point I was going to raise before, actually, yeah.
The technical aristocrat right now will be sitting there listening to it saying, that's wrong, that guy doesn't know what he's talking about. Technically, yes, there are some free zones that will allow you to do what's called redomiciliation, but it is an incredibly expensive and lengthy process. It is not fun. It is not something you want to jump at doing. We have one that's 15 months still ongoing because it's a big corporate and the various steps they need to take in that process are just so hard for them to complete. I just wish they set up a new company and close the other one down. So it
would have been cheaper.
Yeah. And that's where if you set up your company in X jurisdiction and that doesn't work, you're going to have to close it down. Closing a company down means shutting all the accounts, terminating all the staff who then don't have visas. So it is a bit of a ball ache to go through, to be honest.
That's a good point, actually. I'll just touch on that quickly because I think a lot of folks don't realise this. If you do engage one of these sharks to set up your company and realise you've been given wrong advice because you chat to CSP or any other better providers, they will actually charge you a fee to close it down as well too. And quite often it's a hefty fee. So, and you go, what do you mean? I just want to shut it down. I just want to move. Oh, no, look at the contract you signed. And it might cost you 20,000 dirhams to shut down a company that you own that you don't want to do it anymore.
Yeah. You can be stung. And On some occasions, certain jurisdictions have agency setups, so you can only set up through an agent in that zone. So therefore, everything you want to do after that setup is at the discretion of that agent and their fee schedule. So to be transparent, we have like an ADGM CSP license. So we are an authorised agent of the Abu Dhabi Global Market. Next year, we'll do DIFC. We have a fee schedule. So before you set up, everything you can ever ask for us to do is already cleared. So that what we've tried to do over time, I think we've done this part fairly well, is always be transparent. We don't want that horror story where someone set up and it was incorrect. So we have a mechanism with a client accounting team now because of tax. There is an internal mechanism that if any client is setting up a company where there is the slightest chance that there is a tax-free opportunity for them to operate, that goes into an internal review because we never want to get to the point where we've set something
that
up.
Basis.
Finds out that they could have 9% in their account instead of giving it away. So so there are a lot of good CSPs out there. I'm definitely not going to be sitting here, obnoxiously saying we're
number 2, number 3, number 4 behind CSP, of course.
But we've spent a lot longer trying to build that transparency. And again, don't even believe us. Get an independent lawyer always to check. Or someone who's spent some time. Like you, we get along because I know I can send people your way, introduce you because you're transparent, you deliver. So those referrals are gold dust.
Look, I mean, I think it's the sniff test, isn't it?
Yeah.
You've been here longer than I have, but we've both been here long enough to know that who's the good, who's the bad, and who's the ugly. And unfortunately, it's something that catches a lot of folks coming out of Oz by surprise is how many bad and how many uglies there are, because there can be a lot. And, what are some of the sort of, I always like to go bad stories and horror stories just to really bring home the point. What's some of the ones that just come off the top of your head in terms of people who, good intentions, good ideas, wrong outcome?
The costliest one, which so when we have a lot of big corporate clients referred to us, and great clients to have, absolutely, but it's different kettle of fish. You're dealing with a bunch of the C-suites typically because they're looking at expanding with a group of entities or restructuring the group. So there's a whole ton of legal work that goes into it and months of prep. But I prefer to always add value to the small entrepreneur because they're the ones that are tied to budget, that can't afford to be messed up on that journey. They could have a great product, great idea that's going to do really well, but their cash gets burned by just taking the wrong route. Often I hate hearing when a small business gets stuffed around. So I'm more than happy to say this on here. If there's an Aussie with a small business looking to give it a shot out here, I don't want to charge you a fee. I'm more than happy to, over a coffee, sit down and throw a few different options at you with what I call the cheat codes, just some easy, quick bits of advice that can help you get up and running. A mainland license, if it's owned by one person, managed by one person, there's some pretty easy solutions out there. I can send you to a couple of places, 2-3 days. You can be done on your own, maybe just less than 10 WhatsApps between us. So I'm more than happy to do that, just so I know that there's another Aussie that's got a good footing.
Aussies looking after Aussies. So, and it sort of touches on another point I was going to raise too. One thing that folks in Oz wouldn't be aware of the vernacular. ROs versus incorporated versus branches. Do you just want to touch on the different company structures that you can have here? Because in Oz, you're either a sole trader or a Pty Limited or you're a listed company. That's it. Over here, there's a bit of a suite of options to choose from.
Yes, I may limit it. There are quite a few. So you got public joint stock companies, private, and you've got sole establishments, which is like sole trader, limited liability company, which is like Pty Limited. You have civil companies. There's more than that. There's civil limited liability companies as well. There's quite a few out there. What you want to be doing, as you say, you've got branches, rep offices, as you mentioned. A rep office is a branch without the activity to generate income.
Yep.
It's only allowed to market and promote. So it's like a shop front window with no shop behind it.
Yep.
So with anyone looking to set up here, always look for limited liability. So we still see it today. There are some nice ways for companies set up businesses to generate multiple lanes of revenue from someone setting up a sole establishment. That is actually a really good way to generate revenue because there's multiple additional services you need as a sole establishment. But 99% of the time, that sole establishment could be set up as an LLC, limited liability company, and that just means for the investor, your liability for that operation is capped. Sole establishment means unlimited liability. And yeah, time and time again, I meet individuals that sold the dream of the sole establishment, having certain quirks and advantages to it. I won't go into it, but you never want to go down that route. LLC all the way. 3-4 years ago, different ball game. I set up my business as a civil company with a lawyer as a partner. That meant we have unlimited liability. That took a few drinks to get her to agree to that. Lawyer having unlimited liability. Yeah. But at the time, the rules were far trickier and the options far fewer. So that was the only way to avoid, I think it's about 120,000 dirhams of extra costs. Yep. So in setup phase, you can do it if there's an advantage, but just be so clear on this point. I would love to hear anyone try and sell me an advantage in any way for a sole establishment versus LLC. So whatever you're doing here, LLC, sometimes there's a requirement for a branch. Branches can be good because it is an extension of another company. So if you want your Australian company to have an extension here, people contract with you, know that they're contracting with an Australian company that has a presence in the UAE. There's a lot of value add to that, but it also means the liability is unlimited to the Australian company. So a big international corporate would never accept that. I met a Japanese company once that will only set up branches. Okay. And I loved this fact because they want the liability.
Yep.
They want to show to people that work with them that
they own the problem.
That. Yeah.
Wow.
That is a great stance. It's just, I mean, obviously they'll win contracts because of it, and they're just going to be well at managing risk. So
it's that one throat to choke, isn't it? I think it's that, and people find that refreshing, especially, Middle East is known for its cowboys and stuff like that. And I guess it's one way to punch through the noise and say, hey, we'll own it. And I think that's the other thing too. Each one of these questions, we keep circling back to that point. Get advice. Get advice. Yeah. Don't just take everything at face value. Get advice because, Google does a great thing these days. So does ChatGPT and all the other LLMs. But context is everything. Context is everything. You don't know what you don't know. And when you talk to someone who's done it 1,000 times before, it may not be apparent to you as if someone who's coming into the region for the first time, but to them, it might be plain as a nose in your face. You're going to have this issue in 2 years' time unless you do this. It's that problem-solving mentality that I think, we always try and do in financial planning and strategies. You say, well, you tell me X, but I know in 2 years' time you're going to say Y to me. Why? Because I've been doing this for 28 years and I just know. It's that sort of ingrained intellectual property that people who are specialists at what they do just make life, not to say frictionless, but they reduce the amount of friction that can possibly be there and make this a positive experience. I mean, it's, you and I are not going to dissuade anyone from moving here. It's a great place to be. Amazing. You got kids, I've got kids, raising a family, lifestyle, jurisdictionally, close to everything. But that she'll be right attitude doesn't work coming out of Oz saying, oh yeah, mate, it's all good. I read it online or ChatGPT told me to do this and I'm going to do this and these sort of things. And I think that's where people really fall afoul, whether it's company setup, financial advice, all these things. It's the nuances. They'll join the dots in the way that they think it's appropriate, not the way that it actually happens. And one thing people realize very quickly when they get here is this is not Kansas anymore. We don't operate like we do back in Australia. There is a method to the madness. It's just a different method. And once you get your head around that, it sort of makes sense. You sort of, if you squint and look at it, on the side of your head, I can sort of see why they've done that. But I think also too, it's just different. And that's the thing, that intellectual property of making this transaction, making this process, it's never easy, but as easy as possibly can be, but also factoring in future considerations will save you so much time and resources, and you'll keep your hair. And and you and I get advice. That's why we still have hair. I think we're not bald, but I've always believed surrounding myself with smart, intelligent people who are smarter than me, who know what they're doing, protects me, protects my business. And if you're coming in, you're not coming in with $5 to spend. If you're coming in to set up a business, there's an outlay, and
Yeah.
you get one bullet in the gun to pull that trigger. You get one shot to make it work, because otherwise you'll burn through your cash very quickly and pack up your bags and tuck your tail and you're back to Oz, sort of espousing of your bad experience. Whereas it doesn't have to be a bad experience. You just need to do it well.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. The difficulty here is that the moment you hand money over to someone for goods or services, it's going to be very hard to get that money back.
Yep.
Under any circumstances. Say you change your mind 5 minutes later, it's going to be at their discretion when they want to give it back.
Yep.
To force them to give it back, court takes a long time. It's very costly. So you may get it back, but the cost of going to court may outweigh the money you gave them. So you just need to be on your front foot. I sometimes say at events, and it's an extreme commercial environment. There's lots of gains, there's lots of gaps still, and there's tons of money to be made, but you do need to be, front foot. You need to be quite wise as to what's going on around you. So pick well, do your due diligence, and don't trust anyone. Get a second bit of advice every step of the way. The one thing to touch on visas.
Yes.
So when you set up, if you come here, set up a company, the company then will sponsor you. Sponsor meaning they will then open an immigration and labour accounts under the company's name, where you can then get residence visas and work permits for you and staff. It's always key to note that you sometimes need to plan out that move. You set up the company first, then you get the founders or the first employee's visa issued, then for your family and, let's say, wife and kids to come attesting documents. Yep. You need to get them all the way stamped up to UAE embassy in Australia before you come here. So sometimes there needs to be prep work in advance, but visas, we process about, I think we'll do about 1,200 this year. Generally 1,000 is always around the mark. Very few get rejected unless it is a very clear bit of guidance online about certain individuals or nationalities that are currently being blocked, and that happens from time to time anyway. But around those blocks, it's a pretty straightforward process. I get some Australian clients that get worried about, what's going to happen with my visa? It's always quite boringly straightforward.
Yeah, it's a process. It's like a box ticking exercise, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. So, and that's a funny one. If someone's going to say, I'll get you a visa, ask for receipts.
Yeah.
Always ask for receipts. We charge 2,500 dirhams for a standard employment visa. Spouses, kids, less. If someone's charging you more than that, because I think we're generally seeing a little bit on the higher side for that stuff as well. If someone's charging you more than that, questions. Lots of questions.
And that's the funny thing. Like, coming back to your point about where you get the visa, the UAE government wants you here.
Yeah.
They want an excuse to give you that visa. They want you here. They want you here making money and spending money. And that's how they're growing the UAE. But so it's a very different mindset in terms of, there's, all this waiting periods and stuff. I always have, still laugh at it this day, when I set up Atlas in the DIFC and I get the phone call from the lady, Mr. Evans, we need to set up your establishment card. An establishment card means then I can hire myself and put myself on as a visa. Yes, I need to know your mobile number to add to the establishment card. Well, I can't get a mobile number until I have an Emirates ID, which means I have a visa. So it was this whole chicken and the egg sort of, I said, you obviously have companies that come across this all the time. What number do you use? Oh, we used to use mine. Okay, great. Put your number on it. I never thought twice of it. And then COVID happened and suddenly we needed all these activations. And this poor lady in the DIFC apparently was getting thousands of OTPs sent to her phone. Because we never really thought of the other side of it, where those numbers actually go. So the DRC had to actually set up a portal to update your number and get your number off this poor lady's mobile phone, which apparently was like something like 2,000 SMSs a day were kicking off on her phone because all these companies were using her number to set up the
Yeah,
establishment card to then obviously create the visa. Then people could get the Emirates ID and get their own phone numbers.
yeah,
So you will come across that, folks. I promise you. There's all these little quirkiness. What I've always said is ask the questions. Don't
yeah,
expect to know everything coming in. And I didn't expect to know everything. And I still was blindsided by how little I knew until I was actually boots on the ground, walking the corridors, trying to do things and how quickly. And what saved me was people like Carl and other people I could just pick up the phone and say, hey, this is the problem. How have you solved this? Because those problems can go away very quickly. But if you try and work at it by yourself, you're hiding to nothing. And by the end of 6 months, I'd say you'd be emotionally wrecked.
yeah, absolutely. And part of how we met, the Australian Business Council, got to give them a shout out. It's a not-for-profit group. It's been operating 30 years. That group, I've got so many Australian friends through it and just, business contacts alike. It's a bunch of people that quite a few have lived here a long time.
Yeah.
And if you meet another Aussie at a event for that group and they're not selling you anything, it's always good time to ask some questions,
Yeah.
and just to get some anecdotal advice that adds up. If you have 2 or 3 different sources, and yeah, that group's been great, I think, in connecting so many people over the years.
Look, they do a brilliant job, and shout out to Naeem and Joe and all the team there, because to me, they are our community. They're sort of that focal point for the Australian community. Obviously, there's Australian Business Group Abu Dhabi down there. So, well done to Joe and Beck and the team down there as well too. To me, it's nice to have those safe spaces. So like, when you're playing tag at school, this is bar, the Australian Business Council is sort of that safe space in a world that, or a country that has over 100 nationalities all trying to tell you something. Who do you believe? At least you can go back to your crew and sort of just fact check those things. And they do a great job with G'day cafes, in the mornings, and they do those networking nights as well. There's plenty of, it's not just about business. I mean, obviously there's a business element to it, but there's such a social side as well too. It's just that safe space where Aussies can connect, network, have a laugh, share war stories. We've all got them, operating businesses in the UAE. And I think it's that safe space that Aussies need to do well. And you'll find people from all backgrounds and all types of businesses, and they're not all wearing suits. To me, there's a social side to it as well too, which is important. They had a great ball back in June. I'm still getting over the hangover from that one. And to me, it's nice to have that. I can relax around people, who are my people. And it's funny how the embassy or the consulate don't actually know the numbers. And, when I was talking to Ridwan and Brownie, they said only the Emiratis know it, and they actually quite often, the embassy asks us what we think what numbers are, just based on the amount of work we're doing with them. And I think it'd have to be well over 20,000 now. 16,000 was down in the sort of depths of COVID. We know that for a fact, but it'd have to be 20, maybe 22, maybe 24,000. I don't know. I'd love to see an updated number. And there's a lot of folks here doing some awesome stuff. There's folks that have been here for 1,000 years, just killing it, and good on them. They're the trailblazers who were here in the 80s and the 90s, who, hats off to them, how they got around, and they're paying dealer bills by going to the post office, and all these sort of, like, it's just, I love their stories. It really is fascinating stuff. But there's also, people who arrived here this morning. Literally there will be people getting off the Emirates flight out of Oz this morning with their bags packed going, here's my new adventure. And, for those folks, welcome. Hopefully the weather's not too bad for you, but yeah, look, it's exciting time to be here. And all these stories, I think, shouldn't dissuade you from doing this. All these stories should be us imparting knowledge of what we've seen go wrong to help you go right. And I think that's the biggest thing at the end of the day is surround yourself with good people. Don't pay a premium, but don't pay pennies. Just pay good money for good people. You don't have to spend a fortune on that advice, but to me, information's everything.
Yeah. And you just hit on a very good kind of fun on pay. When someone comes to me and says, they're investing $100,000, we keep that front of mind. So, right, what is going to be a setup that's going to work with, what they've got to play? they're looking to invest $100 million, then of course that level of investment may require a lot more protection
Yep.
for the investors and may require boards and things like that. So don't be shy to really knuckle down on that front. Don't let it get overly complicated. I will more often than not see some clients who are investing, let's say $5 million, and they'll say to me, I want a foundation or a trust, and it has a holding company, and because I'll be seeking outside investors, and then some opcos underneath it. I'll more commonly than not just say start with a simple operating company and let's build it up over time, because to add a layer of ownership through a corporate vehicle doesn't cost the earth, and you don't want to be adding all these additional layers of admin and annual fees just from the get-go. So yeah, that's where looking at your plan, what you're going to do in year 1 versus 2, 3, 4, it can change over time, just not jurisdiction. Can't live for life.
You hit on a good point. In Oz, we've almost addicted to structures, because there's one thing you want to avoid: capital gains tax. Folks, change your mindset. There's no capital gains tax here. As Carl said, you can sell off pieces of your company into straight LLC. You don't owe tax. Like you can buy, it costs you $1, sell it for $3. You don't have to have trusts and funnel money through and all these things. Liability different, control different, but from a tax point of view, you don't need to have this unwieldy structures that we have in Australia. When you have a business in Australia, you'll have a family trust that owns the P2A Limited to try and smooth these things out and distribute money to your beneficiaries. You don't need to do that here. So, and it's the funny thing, people sort of need to almost be deprogrammed when they come here, because they come here with a structured mindset. And I always say to folks, talk to someone who knows how to set up the right structure for you and keep it simple. Because quite often too, now that the UAE's gone to great lengths to get themselves off the grey list, and with FATF and all these sort of KYC, AMLs, these are, acronyms that Aussies here in the region understand well, but that new people in the region probably don't. There's one 3-letter acronym that they're going to come over and over again: UBOs. Who's the ultimate beneficial owner? If you have a structure of a company with 3 levels, whoever you're dealing with, whether it's the bank, because you've got to get a bank account, they might be nervous by that. If you keep it light and easy, it's going to be a lot easier, especially in the initial phases when you're not running an empire. You can develop an empire over time, but initially, keep it light, keep it fresh.
Yep, absolutely. And you can build up for various reasons as the business grows and progresses. But sometimes I put the brakes on complex structures.
I do too. I do on the personal side as well too. When I talk about, okay, we're not going to hold this, we're going to hold it in your own name, but tax, it's like, no, there's no tax to it. Oh, you see that penny drop. So, but mate, I think we've taken enough of your time. Really appreciate your input. It's been, this is money can't buy sort of stuff. And for folks who want to reach out to Carl and the team, we'll put links to their website down below as well too. So we might maybe look at doing some online webinars, Carl, soon as well too, just to talk through some of the moving parts of setting up a business. I think it's very important, because gone are the days of an Aussie moving here was a lawyer and aviation, and oil and gas. Now it's everyone. And I think, you have a lot of value to provide to Aussies moving to the region. And I thank you for your time. Guys, just a bit of housekeeping. As you know, everyone knows James and I are very vain. So please give us those reviews, give us those likes, subscribe. We do watch them. We do get very sad when you don't do it. Also on the housekeeping side, we've got a seminar coming up in Qatar next month. So have a look at the events link down below. And Carl, thank you very much for your time today, mate.
Thank you, mate. Good to see you. Catch up soon.
Thanks, mate.